Good evening, I'm Norman Robinson.
And I'm Chris Fairbairn. Just a reminder, you can see your election returns at the bottom of your screen.
Also, we're keeping an eye on the race for Senate and the race for Orleans Parish DA.
Join us for a live update within the next few minutes.
So far, all the Republicans who are expected to go back to the United States Senate have returned. Same is true for the Democrats, but the critical races are still outstanding. We want to begin tonight, however, in the state of Florida, where there's been a big sigh of relief at the governor's mansion and at the White House. NBC News is projecting that the president's brother, Jeb Bush, has been reelected governor of Florida. That means the Republicans will hold that state. The president spent 12 different visits down there raising money and campaigning for his little brother. And tonight, Jeb Bush is winning by a very comfortable margin in that state. During the course of the next hour, we do expect to be talking to him. On the United States Senate side, let's begin with the Democrats. Frank Lautenberg, the winner in New Jersey, replacing Robert Torricelli on the ballot in a controversial decision, but he goes back to the United States Senate after being gone for one term. John Kerry, the winner in Massachusetts, big presidential ambitions in that office. Also in the United States Senate on the Democratic side, from Delaware, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Joe Biden, will be going back. In West Virginia, Jay Rockefeller, no surprise there, another Democrat reelected. In Michigan, Carl Levin, another Democrat, going back to the United States Senate. Richard Durbin in Illinois, our projected winner, a member of the Senate Democratic leadership, and Max Baucus in the state of Montana, the projected winner. So the Democrats so far have returned to the United States Senate all those that they needed to get back to hold on to their very slim majority. But there are outstanding races still to be counted here tonight. We're going to go to Sioux Falls, South Dakota now, and the Senate Majority Leader, Tom Daschle, who hopes by tomorrow at this time he'll still have that title. Senator, we're down to the political equivalent of a 2-minute drill. What are your best hopes now in the closing hours of this election night?
Well, Tom, our best hopes are, of course, first to win those contested seats where we've had a very close race, South Dakota, Missouri, Minnesota. We also think we've got a real good chance in Arkansas and Colorado. There may be other surprises, but those are the ones we're watching right now.
So far, it appears that Libby Dole, for example, in North Carolina is going to win that race. A fair number of the raw vote is in. Have you given up on that one?
Well, we haven't given up on it. No, we don't have enough vote in to be confident about that. Same with Georgia. We think we've got a real good chance yet in Georgia. A lot of the precincts that favor Senator Cleland haven't been reported in yet, so we think we've got a real good shot there. We're watching that one closely as well.
A lot of Democrats, as well as neutral observers, are wondering why the Democrats could not take more advantage of voter concern over the economy, health care, and education, especially in an off-year election when traditionally the political power in the White House loses seats in the Congress. It seems unlikely tonight that the president will lose very much power in this Congress.
Well, Tom, I think, of course, the country was consumed by the issue of Iraq and the debate about the Iraqi resolution and what would happen. And then, of course, North Korea came along. But I do believe that the economy was one of the most critical questions. There is a great deal of concern, in fact, anxiety about the economy, and that was reflected in the vote in many of the states around the country as we now talk to voters and as we've talked to the candidates who have been involved in these campaigns. No question, the economy was a big issue.
However this turns out tonight, it appears that either the Democrats or the Republicans will have a very narrow margin of control in the Senate and the House. Do we expect deadlock for the next 2 years?
Not at all. I don't think we have to see deadlock, Tom. I think that we knew going in that this was going to be a close race, and we knew coming out that it would probably stay close in the House and in the Senate, regardless of who would have control. Now what we've got to do is to put all that behind us and try to find ways to work together. We did it on occasion in the Senate in the 107th Congress. I have no doubt that we can do it again in the 108th. What's
going to happen in South Dakota before the night is out?
I think Tim Johnson's going to win. He's ahead in the early reporting, but it's way too early to tell. We're hopeful he'll win. It looks like that's the way it's going at this point, and we're quite optimistic.
All right, thanks very much, Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle tonight in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Now to the Republicans who are going back to the United States Senate. No major surprises here. There were some concerns. We'll talk about those in a moment. In the Rocky Mountain West, Mike Enzi is going back. He's a Republican senator for a second term. Pete Domenici, one of the old war horses of the Republican Party, returning from New Mexico. In Nebraska, Chuck Hagel, a rising power in the United States Senate, going back for a second term. In Kansas, Pat Roberts, also reelected as a Republican senator. In Oklahoma, James Inhofe is the winner in Oklahoma, reelected, a national security expert. In Mississippi, it's Thad Cochran, who will be returning to the United States Senate. Susan Collins, one of the women in the United States Senate from the state of Maine. Down to the Deep South now to Alabama, Jeff Sessions, reelected to the United States Senate. John Warner, one of the veteran members of that chamber, reelected from the Old Dominion in the state of Virginia. And Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, one of the bulldogs on the Republican side, a man who fiercely fought the idea of campaign finance reform, also reelected to the United States Senate. Someone who's been watching all this with great care tonight is former Republican presidential candidate John McCain, who joins us now, fresh from his stint as the host of Saturday Night Live. Senator, based on what we're seeing tonight, the country is evenly divided. Is it more center than the partisan bickering would reflect here in Washington?
I think so, Tom, but I also think we detect a Republican breeze, not a gale, but a breeze here. We've done better in the House races than many had anticipated. I think we will either have 50-50 or a one-vote majority, and you've got to give a lot of credit to the President of the United States, who campaigned frenetically, and he may have, in these close races, had a lot to do with some of the victories. And some of the, everybody expected a close race in North Carolina. That didn't happen, and so I think there's a bit of a Republican breeze here, and part of it has to be because of the popularity of the president.
And how does the president use that Republican breeze, as you describe it, to his advantage in the next 2 years?
Well, as was pointed out, we've been in virtual gridlock on everything from Homeland Security to prescription drugs to others. The American people deserve better. I think they want better. And I hope that the president's agenda will be now to have a real bipartisan approach to some of these issues. Some of these issues should not be partisan issues, and I hope we can work these out. Otherwise, I think you're going to see an independent party in the United States.
Do you think there's any chance the president will reconsider the tax cut for those at the top of the income brackets in the next 2 years?
Well, I hope he will, because I think it's lower-income Americans that are suffering the most in this economic downturn. I'd like to see one of the first priorities to be a payroll tax cut. There's so many Americans that's the only tax they pay, and some Americans are hurting. Unemployment is up. But I also believe we need to do other things to stimulate the economy in the form of tax reductions as well.
Senator, you raised the rise of the independent party. A number of people around the country are wondering whether you will be tempted to step into that side of American politics and run for president the next time as an independent.
No, but I do say this, that every reliable pollster I know says that unless one or both the parties move to the center, that you will see an independent party come to the fore in American politics. And I just believe that, and I talk to too many people that are frustrated with the gridlock they see, and frankly, this gridlock by the money of the special interests, some of it will be broken now that campaign finance reform law will take effect as of tomorrow, or midnight tonight.
Well, I don't want to play the part of the Tim Russell caricature on Saturday Night Live, but is that a Sherman-like statement? Are you not running?
I cannot envision a scenario.
Thank you very much, Senator John McCain of Arizona
Thanks,
tonight.
Tom.
Well, Tim? We're going to call the United States Senate race now in Tennessee before we get to this. Lamar Alexander is going back. He had presidential aspirations. He's the former governor of that state as well, and he's a son of Tennessee for a long, long time. College roommate of Paul Tagliabue, the commissioner of the National Football League. So no surprise there, Tim. Well, we've been talking about this all night long. We still come down to these races.
We sure do, Tom. He called the easy ones, and now it comes down to the crunch. 8 key races. The Republicans are trying to hold on to Arkansas, Colorado, New Hampshire, North Carolina. If, in fact, North Carolina goes to Elizabeth Dole as being suggested by the raw vote, they have successfully held off a very tough fight. The Democrats are concerned about Minnesota, Missouri, Georgia, South Dakota. What happens if the Democrats win Arkansas and Colorado? What happens then if the Republicans counter by winning Minnesota and Missouri? People say, well, even split, the Democrats stay in control. Not so fast, because the Democratic candidate in Louisiana, Mary Landrieu, must get 50% of the vote in a 4-way race tonight. Otherwise, there's a runoff on December 7th. If she were to lose that, Dick Cheney, as president of the Senate, would vote for Trent Lott as majority leader. It may not come to that, but I don't think we're going to know until tomorrow morning what has happened in Minnesota, Missouri, perhaps even Georgia. The control of the Senate is still in the balance.
And it's a very, very big story tonight because judges will be sent to the Senate by the White House. We have the Homeland Security bill, whole economic reform program that may or may not happen as a result of what happens in those particular states.
Tax cuts and more, and people will be measuring George Bush's performance, his first midterm election, against other presidents in history. If he holds the House and also retakes the Senate, or comes close, it'll be a very historic evening.
It will be a historic evening. It will be only the third time since the Civil War, in fact, that a president of a party in power has, in fact, gained in the House of Representatives. Let's go to NBC's Brian Williams now, who's keeping track of polling data for us, but also the many races for governor, 36 around the country, Brian.
That's right, Tom. And here in New York, we are tracking the following. The Taft hold on GOP politics in Ohio continues tonight. Governor Bob Taft, the Republican, a second term there. Colorado, Bill Owens, who came to prominence after Columbine for a horrible reason, said to harbor some national ambitions, perhaps. Mike Johans in Nebraska. The land of steady habits, Connecticut, returns John Rowland to the State House tonight. Craig Benson in New Hampshire, that's the State House vacated by Jeanne Shaheen. Kenny Gwynn, the favored candidate in Nevada tonight. The gregarious former mayor of Philly, Ed Rendell, the projected winner, governor's seat in Pennsylvania. The Democrats break a 30-year drought in Illinois. Rod Blagojevich is the next governor there. And in New Mexico, first all-Hispanic gubernatorial race in 80 years in this country. A former Clinton official, Bill Richardson, one of 4 of them on ballots around the country tonight. Tom, that's it from New York. For now, back to you.
Thanks very much, NBC's Brian Williams tonight. Now we're going to have the unusual situation of 2 women who were married to presidential candidates serving in the United States Senate while their husbands find other things to do. There is one of them, Elizabeth Dole, our projected winner in North Carolina, introducing her husband, Bob Dole, who spent a lot of time down there campaigning for. Closed a lot in the closing days, but Elizabeth Dole, who's held almost every cabinet post, head of the Red Cross, goes back to her home state of North Carolina, our projected winner tonight. We'll be back with more on election night right after this.
He got darn near close. He did real well. Also, he was on the phone calling all the 100.
From WDSU News Channel 6, this is a Commitment 2002 special.
Good evening, I'm Norman Robinson.
And I'm Chris Fairbairn. We want to bring you up to date with the latest numbers in our local elections.
In the race for the United States Senate, you can see the numbers there on your screen with 24% of the precincts reporting. Mary Landrieu leads with 49%, followed by Suzanne Hike-Terrell at 25% of the count.
And also John Cooksey with 14% and Tony Perkins following up with 9% at this hour. 24% of the precincts reporting. It has been a busy night around town. Let's first check in with News Channel 6 reporter Scott Simmons, who's live at the Landrieu camp at the Fairmont Hotel.
And Scott, what's the mood like there tonight?
Well, it's a little festive. It always is right now before we know the outcome of an election. We're at the Fairmont at a pretty big ballroom. They have a band playing, and a lot of people certainly hoping that the Democrats would be able to take this race tonight. But a lot of key Landrieu people are already talking about the real possibility. They're flirting with a runoff. In fact, upstairs at the Fairmont right now, the incumbent Senator Mary Landrieu is watching those returns with family and friends. In fact, she says already sounding like she's looking at a December 7th runoff. You know, she's had some criticism from some political pundits that she should have been more aggressive in some of her campaign spots. She says it will be a different story if there's a round 2.
Well, there's always a possibility. I mean, we always said it would be about 50-50. I mean, we were very hopeful that we could take this in the first. But again, I'm the only candidate in the country that's run against 8 opponents, 7 Republicans and independents, 1 other Democrat. And so, you know, if we get anywhere close to 50%, we'll consider it a victory. And we...
Even the Democrats right here are having a hard time getting a real feel of where this election is going. For example, they've been watching about 100 polls throughout the state. In areas like Lake Charles or Shreveport, where they watch closely, those polls are at 40 to 50%. That's good. The problem is that other polls are polling way lower than that. Covering the Suzanne Hike-Terrell campaign is Helena Moreno live in Baton Rouge. Let's join her.
Thank you, Scott, and good evening. And yes, the mood here is also pretty tense. Susie Terrell right now is up in one of the rooms here at the Sheraton, and she is perfecting her speech for tonight. She did come down just a few minutes earlier, and she thanked a lot of the people that are here tonight. I don't know how much you can tell, but there is a pretty good crowd that showed up here at the Sheraton Ballroom. Now, someone that would know how Susie is doing right now is her daughter, Julie. Now, Julie, how is your mother holding up right now?
She's doing surprisingly very well. She's not very stressed, so I'm really excited, and she's excited, so a lot calmer than everyone thought she would be.
And I know that you have been following up a little bit on the polls. What can you tell me about that, and what does she think about it?
There's going to be a runoff. It's going to be my mom and Mary Landrieu, and we're ready for it. Every single one of us. That's what we're expecting. That's what we've been expecting since, I think, August when we were in D.C. interviewing. So she's ready for it.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you.
All right. And so bottom line, the crowd is starting to pick up here, but yes, it is a little bit of a tense situation out here. Everyone, of course, waiting to see what the outcome is. Reporting live in the Baton Rouge Sheraton, Helena Moreno, WDSU News Channel 6.
All right, Helena, thank you.
And we'll have an update on the race for Orleans Parish District Attorney when we come back.
Welcome back, everyone. And now for a look at the runoff for Orleans Parish DA, a seat that Harry Connick has held for the past 30 years.
Here are the latest results with 53% of the precincts reporting. Eddie Jordan with 51%, Dell Atkins close behind with 49%.
And in the race for U.S. Senate now, as you can see, Mary Landrieu with 27% of the precincts reporting is leading Suzanne Hyde-Terrell, 50 to 25%.
And the other two candidates following behind, John Cooksey and also Tony Perkins, with 13% and 8% respectively.
That is all for now, and we will have another update for you in about 20 minutes.
And we'll also continue to run the latest returns at the bottom of your screen throughout the night. We'll see you again in just a bit.
Proud parents tonight in the state of Florida. One of their sons has been reelected governor of that state, the first Republican to be reelected in Florida's history, and with a lot of help from another son who is occupying 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. There is Jeb Bush. We do expect to be hearing from him during the course of this hour. He's mightily relieved tonight. The race got to be pretty close, and in fact, in the last 36 hours or so, they thought that McBride, who was his novice Democratic challenger, was closing in on him, but he did well. His brother had 12 different visits down there. He still has a lot of challenges before him in getting class size down and getting the economy straightened out. But there now is the President 41, as they call him within the family, George Bush, who's always a little more nervous about these things than is Barbara Bush, who is a little more warrior-like when it comes to politics. We're joined now by a powerful voice in American politics, the conservative commentator Rush Limbaugh. Earlier, John McCain called this a Republican breeze, as we're seeing it so far. Do you think that's a fair characterization?
Well, I tell you what's amazing about this. I was looking at the numbers. You have 34 seats up. The Republicans had to maintain 20, win 20 just to maintain where they are. That's 60% that they had to win tonight. Even if they lose a couple, they still have won a majority. I think that this is probably not a dramatically historical night, but it is historical, as you've been talking about all night, from the standpoint of how many times something like this has happened since the Civil War. But the amazing thing to me about this is the two campaigns that were run. I mean, we had throughout the 90s the Democrats saying that they needed to separate themselves from the old Democrats, such as McGovern and Mondale. When they ran into trouble, they went back to those people. The Democratic Leadership Council was set up to establish this new Democrat situation. They talked about building a bridge of the 21st century, and when they got in trouble, where did they go? They had to go way, way back to people who had retired. Their better days are behind them. If you look at the campaign, who did they send out to help Democrats in trouble? Bill Clinton. You didn't see future presidential candidates on the Democratic side out there trying to rouse the base. I don't know. The party didn't have any issues that it's reportedly stood for. It was running a fear campaign, telling people they're going to be minus their Social Security, school lunch cuts. It was like the 95 budget bite all over again.
But weren't you surprised, given what the voters were saying about their concerns about the economy and health care and education, that the Democrats didn't even make a run at capitalizing on that, to say nothing of corporate scandals with the resignation tonight of Harvey Pitt?
I think they tried it all throughout the year. I think since September 11th, they've tried issue after issue. They've tried the economy, they've tried any number of things, but they kept walking into closed doors. Nothing that they tried worked. Now, the reason I think this exists is that the Democrats' success in the past has been to demonize a Republican figurehead who is a leader. They got away with that with Newt Gingrich, but they can't demonize George Bush. He has no character deficiencies. He's an honest man. People love him. He seems to have a very decent way about him. And so all of these threats that the Democrats were promising people, nobody believed them this time around. I think they've got an old playbook. I think they're going to have to junk it, and they're going to have to go back and try to give people reasons to vote for them rather than ginning up support or opposition to their opponents as their sole means of victory, because it's not working tonight.
In a nonpartisan way, all the polls that we saw, and from an anecdotal point of view, as I went across the country, everybody complained to me, Republican and Democrat alike, about attack ads and the amount of money that were spent on these campaigns. The people are more interested in finding common ground out there than they seem to be when they get to Washington.
Well, you hear this every cycle, that the negative ads are getting worse and people are becoming more and more opposed to them. We heard today we're going to have a record low turnout. Didn't materialize, did it? We had some places were very high. It's probably going to be a higher turnout than was expected. I mean, it's a sad thing, I guess, in some people's view, but these negative ads work for some people. But in this case, the point I want to make about the Democrats is that look, with the economy where it is, it's not the greatest economy in the world, clearly. We all have to admit that. It's not as bad as they've said it was, but it certainly isn't great. This is an off-year election. Tradition says they should pick up 10 seats in the House, 12. This shouldn't even have been a matter of debate tonight. You look at what's happened here tonight, it's clear that you can chalk it up to whatever you want, negative ads or this. I think the Democrats simply this time didn't give anybody reason to vote for them. And Bush successfully nationalized the race, so they had no national issues to really battle him with.
Rush, in 2000, it became clear to people in the country that we're a 50-50 nation, divided between Democrats and Republicans. Since that time, we've had September 11th, the corporate corruption, we've had the economic downturn, the impending war with Iraq. Are you surprised it's still a 50-50 country?
Well, no. I think that I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I like partisanship. I like people who stand for things and are not afraid to admit it. And I think that it's the arena of ideas, and I like a genuine competition for that.
But there's been no seismic shift, which is interesting in 2 years.
Well, you can say there hasn't been a seismic shift, but there should have been tonight and wasn't. I mean, just going on tradition, the off-year elections, there should have been, when you throw them all the things you've been asking me about. The economy, as I say, not the greatest thing. They were unable to really capitalize. They only had, I mean, as I say, 34 seats. They only had 14 up, had to win 2 or 3, and they still may. I mean, it's still early looking at your chart. But the House, I think the Republicans are going to end up gaining seats in the House tonight. This has got to be, for Republicans, a good night. And I think in the Democratic cloakrooms behind closed doors, there's going to be some serious discussion about who's going to lead this party, where are we going to go from this day forward, because this does not bode well for them in 2004.
Rush, we're going to look at some numbers that could prove crucial before the night is out. This is Louisiana, where Mary Landrieu has to get over 50% of the vote to avoid a runoff. And as you can see, with about 41% of the precincts counted so far, she's a couple of points below that. If that turns out to be the case all night long, given the patterns that we're seeing, we may not know the results of the Senate until December 7th. It's deja vu all over again.
Well, where there's some of these races, you know, you look at Minnesota, it's very close. You've got an absentee ballot question there. You know, you mentioned the partisan split of the country. You know, you don't know until you ask people what it is that motivates them, gets them out to the polls and so forth. I can tell you from the standpoint of many Republican voters, what's happened in New Jersey with election law not mattering, it just simply didn't matter. I mean, just change it. If you've got the judges, change it. It's no big deal. That may not have had an impact in New Jersey, but I think it got the Republican vote. I think this rally for Mondale, which the supposed memorial for Wellstone, brought out some Republican votes nationwide. And this Mary Landrieu situation is interesting because, as you've been saying all night, this could be where it all turns.
Rush Limbaugh, thank you very much. You're going to be with us later tonight as well, because we're coming back at 1 o'clock.
As long as necessary.
That was said in an engaging, not in a threatening fashion, everyone. We're going to be hearing from Bob Kerrey, former United States Senator on the Democratic side, and Richard Gephardt has a lot at stake tonight as well. We'll be hearing from him as well when we come back on Election Night 2002.
From WDSU News Channel 6, this is a Commitment 2002 special.
Good evening. I'm Norman Robinson.
And I'm Chris Fairbairn. Just to bring you up to date now with the latest numbers in our local elections.
That's right. The runoff for Orleans Parish District Attorney is first up. Let's take a look at those numbers, if we can, in the hotly contested race for this particular seat. The first time we're going to get a new DA in 30 years. Eddie Jordan with 75% of the precincts reporting, leading Dale Atkins, his opponent, 51 to 49%.
And also tonight, the runoff for the DA, we're going to go to the Fairmont Hotel, and that's where Eddie Jordan's camp is tonight.
WDSU News Channel 6's Richard Angelico is there live. Richie?
Norman and Chris, we're here at Eddie Jordan's campaign headquarters, and it's a little closer than most people thought right now, and 51 to 49%, and there are some folks getting a little antsy right now. Franz Ziblich is here with me, my good friend Franz. Franz, you placed fourth in the race, and early on through your support behind Eddie. Right now, it's 51 to 49%. It's a little closer right now than you predicted it would be. What's going on, you think?
Well, we don't know where those precincts are from. We know one thing. The African-American turnout in New Orleans East is huge. I mean, at 8:15, there was huge lines, and we think that's a good thing for us.
Do you think, where's he going to pick up his strength, do you think? Where is he going to pick up his strength? Among what segment of voters, do you think?
Well, we feel positive in all segments. You know, the story was that we were not going to do any good at all in the white community. We've had nothing but great reception in the white community, especially out in Lakeview. The Algiers turnout was huge. Uptown has been very, very good. And, of course, the Times-Picayune endorsements to Jordan, and we think that's going to help him a lot in Lakeview, as well as Uptown.
All right. Thank you very much, Franz. Good to see you. All right, and Norman and Chris, back to you.
Well, we are here at the Dale Atkins camp. A good crowd here so far. People here are optimistic that the numbers look pretty good. They say that although Dale Atkins is not leading, it is a tight race, and they do feel confident that she will pull it off by the end of the night. We spoke with Dale Atkins earlier today. She says she's worked day and night, that she's worked very hard, and she does feel that she'll be able to beat Eddie Jordan tonight. She's had several key endorsements, and one of those endorsements is PANO. We're here now with Lieutenant David Benelli, the president of PANO. How are you guys feeling tonight?
You know, we knew this was going to be a very close race, and probably until the last precinct is counted, we'll know who the next DA is. But we're confident that, you know, that we're going to have a new DA, and we hope it's Dale, but whomever it is, we'll be able to work with that individual.
All right, thank you so much for talking to us. There's a sign behind me that says the best man for the job is a woman, and we'll find out tonight if the voters agree. Back to you.
All right, Melanie, thank you. Back in a moment with more Commitment 2002.
We'll look at the battle for Mary Landrieu's U.S. Senate seat.
Our Commitment 2002 coverage continues now with a look at the battle for the United States Senator from Louisiana.
Here are the latest numbers with 31% of the precincts reporting. Mary Landrieu with 52%. Suzanne Hike-Terrell with 25%, followed by John Cooksey and Tony Perkins following behind.
Right now, we think we have a projected winner from Metairie, the U.S. Congressman David Vitter, who's now making his acceptance speech, I would think, his victory speech.
Okay, well, we're having some technical problems, but obviously it looks like a very happy David Vitter at this hour, celebrating with his supporters at his campaign headquarters in Metairie. And that's where we stand at this hour, but the night is still young.
Join us for an extended 10 p.m. newscast with the latest returns, live team coverage, and political analysis. For now, I'm Norman Robinson.
And I'm Chris Fairbairn. We'll see you again in a few minutes.
We're back once again with election night 2002. We want to show you the vote that we have it so far in the state of Florida. Almost all of the precincts have been counted so far. A commanding victory for Jeb Bush, who will become the first Republican to be returned to office in that state as governor. Bill McBride, the Democratic novice, with 42% of the vote. And we're joined now by Jeb Bush, who joins us from Florida tonight. First of all, congratulations, Governor.
Thank you, Tom.
What did your brother say to you when he called from the White House?
Well, he said he was proud, and I thanked him for his incredible support. The president's very popular down here. He came here last Saturday night. We had about 11,000 people in Tampa, and it helped motivate the troops, and we had a great turnout.
Governor, the Florida voters, like voters across the country, were saying in all the polls that I saw that they were very concerned about the American economy, about health care, about education. Which of those domestic issues do you think your brother should concentrate on, and how in the next couple of years?
Well, the national economy is weak. Florida's economy is stronger, and I think it is the proper role of the president to focus on creating fertile ground for people to create jobs and for working families to do well. I'd just as soon have the education policies be developed by the states.
You have something called Amendment 9, as you well know, on the ballot down in Florida, and that would cut down on class size. It could be a very expensive proposition. We've got about, what, 88% of the vote in so far. It looks like it's going to be very close. If, in fact, Amendment 9 passes, how do you pay for it in the state of Florida?
Well, you either have to cut spending or you have to increase taxes, and that's a dilemma that I posed to the people of the state. As a candidate, I said I was going to vote no because I didn't want to raise taxes. I think the economy in the state, in the country, is recovering but fragile, and tax increases would hurt the recovery. So we'll see what happens if it passes, but it's such a big initiative, it costs billions of dollars, that there's really only two alternatives.
But it could be a real conundrum, especially for a Bush. I remember another Bush one time who said he would not cut taxes, and then he was forced to. That was your father, obviously. Do you think you can do that?
I've said that, you know, I have a record of tax cutting that's one of the leading ones in the country, but I've said that we would have to raise taxes because the cuts would have to be so dramatic in environmental programs and in programs for the developmentally disabled, for the needy, that we couldn't do it with cuts alone.
Governor, we've been witness in the last week or so, again, to the inconsistencies in American immigration policies. We had a boatload of Haitians arrive here. They were going to be sent back. If Cubans arrive and get on shore, they get to stay. I know that you've said that everybody should be welcome here. Is that going to get worked out?
Well, what I've said is that Haitians should be treated as all other nationalities, and I think that's fair, and I believe it will get worked out. But we don't want to create a magnet for people to risk their lives and cross the Straits of Florida and endanger their lives and create huge costs to southern Florida. So there needs to be a proper balance.
Finally, Governor, after all your brother did for you in the state of Florida, does he get to borrow your baseball glove whenever he wants to now?
Yeah, he does.
All right.
He sure does.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, congratulations. We have another call in the United States Senate. This was not unexpected. Lindsey Graham, a Republican member of the House, running for Strom Thurmond's seat as a senator from the state of South Carolina. He is our projected winner there tonight. Lindsey Graham, going from the House of Representatives. He was one of the impeachment managers against Bill Clinton, one of those who, in fact, survived that assignment. Let's go now to Richard Gephardt, who's the Democratic leader in the United States House of Representatives. And it does appear pretty clear tonight, Congressman, that you're not going to regain control of that chamber.
Well, I wouldn't jump to that conclusion yet, Tom. We got a long way to go. We've had some good races that we didn't expect, frankly, in states like Pennsylvania and Maryland and Georgia. We've even got one in Alabama that we didn't expect. So we've had some good surprises. There are other places we haven't done as well as we would have liked. I think you're going to have to wait till you see the West, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, before you can really figure out the House.
If you do not gain control, are you prepared to stay as the minority leader of the House?
Well, let's get the results. Obviously, you've got to look at all that, and decisions have to be made, but I want to see the results, and I want to see how we've done in the House. I think we still have a chance to take back the majority in the House, something that our whole caucus has worked so hard on these last 2 years.
However these results turn out, will they affect in any way what is widely seen as your very serious flirtation with running for president again?
I haven't figured any of that out. I've been concentrated on winning back the House, and we're still in the hunt tonight. And maybe by morning we'll have a better answer, and then we can go from there.
Congressman, a lot of Democrats are surprised that your party was not able to take more advantage of voter concern with education and in the economy and health care issues. In fact, this could be a historic election for the Republicans, maybe for only the third time since the Civil War they're able to gain seats while holding the White House.
Well, Tom, that remains to be seen. As I said, we have a ways to go, but if that were to happen, I think what you've seen in this campaign is the tremendous influence of special interest money. We had campaigns where their candidate was backed up by the pharmaceutical companies, by all kinds of special interests. They in some campaigns, were spending $6 million on a House race, and our candidate was hardly able to come up with $2 million. So if we hold ground or gain ground or certainly win back the House, it'll be a real testimony that the people were able to get through all that special interest money and vote for their own interest for things like health care and jobs and pensions and corporate responsibility, which were issues in all the campaigns.
All right, thank you very much. Richard Gephardt, who's the Democratic leader in the House of Representatives, a longtime congressman from the state of Missouri. We'll be back with more on election 2002 right after this, as we look at Frank Lochner going back to the United States Senate from the state of New Jersey, an unexpected turn in his 78-year-old life. There is other news on this election night. NBC's Andrea Mitchell is reporting that France now has agreed to a compromise resolution against Iraq. The U.S. expects that France will vote in favor of the resolution tomorrow when there's a meeting at the UN Security Council. Russia and China expected to abstain. It says that if Iraq fails to comply or blocks inspectors, it would constitute a further material breach of its obligations. That would be reported back to the UN Security Council. Well, it does not authorize unilateral U.S. military action. It would not exclude it, obviously, and the UN Security Council would have very little choice except to move against Iraq. Let's go to NBC's David Gregory now at the White House. Do we expect an acceleration of administration plans against Iraq after the election, David?
I think you would, especially if the UN resolution goes through. Armed with that and a resolution from Congress, it allows the administration to accelerate war plans, for the president to refine whatever plans he wants to go forward with. So there's no question that those obstacles will be removed.
David, what about some of these races that are still too close to call tonight? What's the White House saying?
Well, it's still early, but there's a lot of confidence at the White House. I've spoken to senior White House officials, also some Republican Party officials. Let's go through some of the races. Minnesota is still very, very early, but there is some degree of optimism here for Norm Coleman. The way that some of the vote is coming in, apparently looking good with a very small margin coming back. In Georgia, still a toss-up. From the White House perspective, but they like Saxby Chambliss's, the way he's running in some of the outlying areas in Georgia, even the suburbs around Atlanta. The big question there, whether the Democratic vote will overwhelm him in Atlanta, that's still a big question. In Missouri, again, more optimism about Jim Talon's chances right now, but that race is still close. Also optimism from Republican officials and the White House in Colorado. They like how Wayne Allard is running with still very little of the vote coming in there. South Dakota is an area of concern for the White House, as you see the numbers there. They don't like how John Thune is running in some areas that should have been bellwethers for them. Also, Arkansas, another area of concern for this White House and for Republican officials. You look at the numbers there, they think it may be gone. Big war room going on in the White House residence right now. The president intensely watching these returns and making phone calls to winners tonight, Tom.
All right, thanks very much, NBC's David Gregory. We had been told earlier that the president would go to bed after calling Jeb Bush, but with the Senate at stake, and it really is at stake at this hour, Tim. We're getting down to just a handful of races.
It sure is, Tom, and if in fact the Republicans are leaning in Georgia and they have a chance to take that seat, that makes it imperative the Democrats capture Arkansas and Colorado. Both. Otherwise, we may have the Louisiana December 7th date staring him in the face as a runoff. Or if the Republicans take Georgia and then pick off Missouri and Minnesota, Trent Lott is the new majority leader. This is too close to call. And Tom, some other interesting news on the raw vote. With 93% in Maryland, a state that is 2.5 to 1 Democratic, the Republican Robert Ehrlich is beating Kathleen Kennedy Townsend 53 to 47. Massachusetts, another Democratic state, the Republican Mitt Romney is ahead of Shannon O'Brien by some 7 percentage points. 2 Democratic states.
It's getting to be what John McCain called a Republican breeze, and it's stiffening against the Democrats.
But you do have governors in Pennsylvania, Illinois, Michigan going from Republican to Democrat. The Democrats will point to that. But still, this is disturbing news for the members of the Democratic Party, no doubt tonight.
All right. Checkerboard country. Brian Williams, what have you got for us?
That evenly split country you've been talking about all night, Tom. We've been polling 3 days right up until the vote. We're finding the exact same thing. 46% of people say things are headed in the right direction. 45% say they're going down the wrong track. No surprise, 2/3 of Democrats say things are on the wrong track. 70% of Republicans say they're pleased with the direction. First two big issues are the economy. 1 in 5 voters worried about that. Compared that to the last time we asked, only 9% of voters were very worried, but a rising stock market lifts all boats. That was then, this is now. The other issue on everyone's mind is terrorism. They've been told to expect another attack, after all, by the government. Just think, all the people elected tonight have no idea what they'll be facing. George Bush did not know during the last election that this city would be minus the World Trade Center as we sit here tonight. Tom?
So much has changed in the last 2 years. It certainly has. NBC's Brian Williams. But as it now sits tonight, this is going to be a good evening for President George W. Bush because, as we have been saying repeatedly, traditionally, Republicans who are sitting in the White House or Democrats who are sitting in the White House, whatever the power, the party in power, it loses seats in an off-year election. As many as 55, for example, Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1942 at the height of the United States involvement in World War II, Tim.
In the first midterm election for Bill Clinton, the Republicans captured the House and the Senate for the first time in history. In fact, tonight, if the president gains seats in the House and the Senate, it will truly be historic.
Right. Well, that's where we stand at this hour. We have a reminder for you. We're going to be back tonight after the Tonight Show. It's about then that we should be able to tell you what's going to happen to the United States Senate and have a clearer picture of what's going on in the House of Representatives. And of course, we want to remind you we'll have continuing coverage on MSNBC, CNBC, and constant updates on MSNBC.com. I'm Tom Brokaw for all of my colleagues at NBC News. I'll see you later.
From WDSU, this is News Channel 6.
Our top story tonight, all eyes are on Louisiana tonight to see if there will be a runoff in the race for U.S. Senate. Good evening, I'm Chris Fairbairn.
And I'm Norman Robinson. Democrat incumbent Mary Landrieu is fighting hard to keep her seat from going into a runoff.
Here's a look at the top 4 runners in the senatorial race. 61% of the precincts reporting at this hour. Mary Landrieu with 49%, Susie Terrell 27%. John Cooksey is following behind at this hour, and Tony Perkins is also bringing up the top 4 with 8%.
WDSU News Channel 6 reporter Scott Simmons joins us live from incumbent Senator Mary Landrieu's campaign headquarters.
Good evening. We're now waiting for Mary Landrieu to step before the microphones. We're expecting her in the next few seconds, although it looks like right now, for all intents and purposes, Ms. Landrieu is looking at a runoff, at least engaging some of the numbers from the state. Some of the Landrieu camp numbers say 46% for her, Hike Terrell 26%, 14% John Cooksey. Again, those unofficial returns, and certainly the Democrats were hoping to take this outright tonight, but certainly they face an enormous battle from about $3 million in Republican ad money to the behest of really all 3 Republican candidates setting sights on Mary Landrieu. Mary Landrieu has received some criticism for not going stronger in some of her attack ads and defending against the Republicans. She's already vowed tonight that it'll be a different scene as we go through the second round. They're still counting second rounds. Before the microphone right now is Rich Masters, as he is now welcoming Mary Landrieu into the stage, being led or followed by U.S. Senator John Breaux. Mary Landrieu approaching the stage. They have been upstairs for the better part of the night, gauging returns, being with family and friends, and also checking about 100 precincts to get an honest returns. They're looking at 46, 47%, and they seem reserved to the fact that they are headed into a runoff. Of course, the biggest concern being just how big a runoff it will be.
Louisiana, are you ready to win? Yes! What a great campaign this has been, and I came down to thank you for everything that you've done and that we've done together. We don't have the final numbers. It's very close. It's very close. But we are so proud of this state in mind. When the president's right, we work with him. When he's wrong, we say no, let's go our way. This campaign has spoken the truth. We've spoken honestly. We've stayed focused on the issues. And I just want to tell you how proud I am of everyone, my family that's here. All of these people are actually related to me. And this is a secret weapon. If the Landrieux vote, we'll win. And the Landrieux have voted tonight. And besides my wonderful family and Frank here and my husband and 2 beautiful children, we've had bad weather. We've had 3 tornadoes. We have 8 opponents, but we've got John Brew. Yes! This is a winning team for Louisiana right here. Yes! So listen, when we get back, come here, Mary Shannon, when we get back in a little while, we will know if we've gone over that 50%. And I'll tell you, we're going to claim victory tonight, but if we fall just a little short, we're going to go on for 4 weeks to win this race, if we have to, in 4 weeks. And I'll tell you why, just one more word. The people of this state deserve excellent schools for their children. They deserve good highways. They deserve a way out when the waters get high, and they deserve a senator that will fight for them and put their interests first. And that's what this campaign has been about. It will be about, and we're going to claim victory tonight, and if not, we're going to take it to them in 4 weeks. Yes!
Boy, an excited crowd at the Mary Landrieu campaign headquarters. And keep in mind, though, if Mary Landrieu fails to get 50 plus 1% of the vote, it looks like that Susie Terrell could be in a runoff against Landrieu December 7th.
WDSU News Channel 6 reporter Helena Moreno joins us live from the Suzanne Hike Terrell camp in Baton Rouge. Helena.
Thank you so much, Norman. Susie Terrell just took the podium, and let's go ahead and listen to what she has to say.
They're not the most seasoned, but they are the most loyal. And our campaign has reached across Louisiana, and our volunteers have worked tirelessly. Thank you so much. We are so optimistic, not just about tonight, but where we're going in our future. People in Louisiana have crossed party lines, they've crossed racial lines, and they've heard our message of Louisiana. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think they know one thing about Susie Terrell. When she makes a promise, she keeps a promise. And we're going to take our message across the state. We're going to keep hoping and praying the rest of the night, and I hope you'll stick with us. I tell you what, Louisiana, you are a great place to be, a great state, and I know that we can have a great, great future. So all of you all who love our state, and who care about our future, all of you who believe that we have the need for greater opportunities for our children, we welcome you to join us. In our campaign, no one's support will be taken for granted. I'd like to say that as we are being optimistic. I would like to thank John Cooksey and Tony Perkins. Two good men who have run good campaigns, and we should thank them tonight for their commitment to our state, their passion for our principles, and their love for our country. If we get to where I think we're going tonight, I look forward to working with John and Tony to win this race for Louisiana. They and their supporters, from Governor Foster to their sign waivers and volunteers across this state, know how important this race is to our future, and I welcome them to join our campaign. We have come so far, but we are not done yet. Tomorrow, hopefully, will only mark the beginning. And I wish Mary Landry good luck, and I look forward to engaging her from Shreveport to Grand Isle, city by city, town by town, person by person.
Susie Terrell supporters also very excited about the numbers tonight, and you've been seeing them flash at the bottom of your screen. So right now, I believe Susie Terrell is coming in behind Landry with 27% of the vote. Now, with 75% of the precincts reporting at this hour, about 10 after 10 o'clock. Another big race taking place right here in New Orleans.
Voters are deciding who will replace longtime DA Harry Connick.
Here's a look at those numbers in the Orleans Parish DA's race. Eddie Jordan with 51%, Dale Atkins with 49%, and that is with 89% of the precincts reporting at this hour.
Right now, let's go to WDSU News Channel 6 reporter Richard Angelico live at the Jordan camp from the Fairmont Hotel. Richie.
Well, Norman and Chris, it's a little closer than the Jordan people are comfortable with at this point. Eddie Jordan was supposed to be down here by 10 o'clock and make his way over to the podium by 10:15 or so, but these numbers have him still up in his room. He's working the telephones, talking with advisors, trying to decide whether or not he's going to hold on to that 51% lead or is hoping to grow the lead, perhaps if he can, but who knows at this point. We're just going to have to wait and see. There's an air of cautious optimism here, but I've got to tell you, these people thought the numbers would be a lot heavier in Eddie Jordan's favor. Norman and Chris, back to you.
All right, with 89% of the precincts reporting a slim margin at best, a real horse race tonight.
All right, WDSU News Channel 6 reporter Melanie Sanders, meantime, she's in the Warehouse District at Dale Atkins camp. What's the mood there tonight, Melanie?
Well, everyone's watching, obviously, the numbers coming in. They're watching very, very closely. They say they are optimistic and they're going to be proud of Dale Atkins regardless of the outcome tonight. Obviously, the people of the outcome of the race. She has always said that she has worked hard day and night, and hopefully that all of that hard work will pay off. Again, the numbers don't look great for Dale Atkins, but they are going to watch the numbers until obviously there is an outcome before she comes out to make any kind of a speech. We have a longtime supporter of Dale Atkins. Fred Herman is here to talk to us. Obviously, you guys are still optimistic, but no matter what you say, you're going to be proud of Dale Atkins.
That's exactly right. We're very proud of Dale. Dale has run a wonderful, wonderful race. She's a great lady, and we're looking forward to seeing the outcome of this race and moving on from there.
There's a lot of talk of the Cleo Fields ad and how it affected the campaign and if it added some votes for her. How do you think that came out? She said it wasn't negative, it was a truthful ad.
My belief is it was a truthful ad. I know it was a truthful ad. Cleo Fields' issue in this campaign where Mr. Jordan is concerned was something I think the voters had forgotten about. I think it was very important for them to remember, and I think that's why that message was brought.
All right, Fred Herman, so thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
Back to you.
All right, Melanie Sanders reporting from the Warehouse District, Dale Atkins campaign headquarters. And in Metairie, it looks like an easy win for Congressman David Vitter.
That's right. The congressman a shoe-in tonight with 82% of the vote, as opposed to his closest competitor, Monica, with only 11%. In fact, Congressman Jefferson is a shoo-in as well. WDSU News Channel 6 reporter Ed Reams joins us live from the Vitter camp.
That's right, Norman and Chris. At one point this year, Congressman David Vitter was considering a run for the governor's office, but decided that that was not where his love was. His family, and he decided that he would stay and run for another term in Congress. Then, overwhelming vote, they have sent him back to Washington. Congressman David Vitter is with me now. You said earlier you were honored that you're going back to Washington.
Absolutely honored and humbled, particularly at this percentage. It's just overwhelming. We got 80% 2 years ago. I didn't think we'd be able to top it, and we may before the night is done. So it's very humbling.
Does Louisiana benefit when we get some seniority, especially in Congress? This will be 2 terms, 2.5 terms you got going here?
Sure, key committees help. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. Other members of the delegation are on key committees, and obviously as you serve longer, you move up the ranks and can be more effective. So that all of that is helpful. But I don't think it's the most important thing. The most important thing is, does the person represent the values of the district, the values of his fellow citizens? And I think I do that for the 1st Congressional District.
Any issues that you want to tackle during this term, something that you haven't had a lot of time to spend, maybe even in your prior term?
Well, I have been focused on the economy and the recession, but that's job one. Nationally, we have a recession. We need to work out of it. In Louisiana, we need to develop and diversify our economy, bring better jobs to our state for our kids' future, and that's job one.
Okay, Congressman David Vitter, again, congratulations. Thank you again. Again, Congressman Vitter heading back to Washington, overwhelming vote, 82% of the vote, and we're going to send it back to you.
All right. Now a look at the Harahan Police Chief race.
And if you'll look at these numbers, John Doyle Jr. was trying to succeed his late father's footsteps and continue his reign as sheriff,
he was running
police
against...
chief, that is. And here we have the results now. Peter Dale with 63% and John Doyle III, with 37% of the vote at this hour.
And the statewide voters decided, as you know, on 12 constitutional amendments. Let's see how they're doing.
The first one you're going to look at is a legislative session change. That's number 2. And let's take a look at those numbers if we can. On the, well, we're just going to tell you all about these amendments right here. Okay, let's tell you. The amendment number 1 first has to do with legislative session changes for fiscal issues. And with 88% of the precincts reporting at this hour, 54% of the voters have voted for Constitutional Amendment 1, and 46% are voting against.
And let's look at Constitutional Amendment 2, shall we, to see how the vote for that particular issue is going, with 98% of the precincts reporting. That particular amendment is winning, and this is known as the Stelly Plan, which increases income tax for the middle class.
It's sort of an income tax swap, if you will, for the sales tax as well. Now, here is Constitutional Amendment number 3, which involves state budget adjustments, and as I understand it, that would be taking money from dedicated funds to trim the budget. That would allow for that, and that is passing at this hour 57% to 43%.
Boy, you've been keeping up with these amendments. That's pretty good.
Well,
that one was
I've got my cliff notes.
That was a tough one. The Constitutional Amendment number 4 item on the ballot, with 85% of the precincts reporting, that one appears to be winning as well. And number 4 allows a no-brainer, really, allowing the firing of a public employee convicted of a felony.
And actually, you know, the reason I had to take a little sheet in with me into the voting booth so I could remember what all these amendments were about in short form. Here's amendment number 5, and boy, that one is really close with not all of the votes in it this time. But number 5 would involve property tax exemptions for developers of retirement communities, and that's 50-50 at this point.
And this one has really been being pushed hard by public employees like firefighters and police officers. This is Constitutional Amendment number 6. It's a very crucial item for them, with 85% of the precincts reporting. That appears to be winning by a large margin. And this amendment, number 6, makes supplemental pay for police and firefighters permanent.
That is critical for police and firefighters. Now, amendment number 7 is a special property tax assessment for senior citizens. And if you'll look here, with 85% of the precincts reporting, 68% are voting for it and 32% are against it.
As for Constitutional Amendment number 8, This particular amendment will allow higher education investments in the stock market, and with 84% of the precincts reporting, this one appears to be in a dog race with 50% for and 50% against at the moment.
A lot of amendments to vote on tonight. Amendment number 9 deals with Medicaid trust fund investments in the stock market, and that is 51% against and 49% for.
And constitutional amendment number 9 would create a drought protection.
Number 10.
Well, number 10, rather, would create a drought protection trust fund, and that appears to be winning with 53% for, against. That appears to be losing, rather, with 53% against and 47% for.
Amendment number 11 has to do with a tax break for offshore drilling rigs, and as you can see here, most people have voted against that, 54% to 46%.
And finally, amendment number 12, a really strange one. This particular amendment allows the incumbent coroner now in Livingston Parish, who is not a medical doctor, to run for re-election, providing her opponent is a medical doctor. With 75% of the precincts reporting, 57% of the people in Livingston Parish are saying that they are against that. And only 43% are for.
It is interesting that people in other parishes would be voting on the Livingston Parish coroner's situation. All right, let's go to Alec Gifford now for some analysis on some of the races that we've been following throughout the evening, some of the bigger races, including Senate and also DA. We'll be getting to Alec and Dr. Silas Lee and Dr. Susan Howell shortly.
There's some real close races out there that we have yet to discuss, one being a race for Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals between the Clerk of Criminal Court Edwin Lombard and Sidney Cates. You've been watching their commercials on television. They have really been going at each other tooth and nail. Also, the race for a criminal judgeship at Criminal District Court between the first assistant for Harry Connick, Tim McElroy, and Darrell Durbany, who is a professor of law from Loyola University, who's new to the political arena. And at last check, he was leading the veteran McElroy.
And it was interesting when Alec Gifford was running his profiles of all the candidates from several of the big races that the two of them were profiled. That was an interesting twist on seeing their personalities, seeing their issues that they're confronting, and so we'll see the outcome of that as well. We will be right back with our continuing coverage of Election Day 2002.
But first, here's a look at the 12 proposed constitutional amendments again that we just broke down for you. Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Commitment 2002.
We're going to go out to Melanie Sanders. She's with Dale Atkins, DA candidate at the Holiday Inn in the Warehouse District. Melanie.
Dale Atkins has emerged from a hotel room. They have been watching the numbers, obviously, very closely. She has come out. A lot of people here support her, families, friends, people who've endorsed her, coming out here hoping for a victory tonight. The numbers have looked like she's trailing right now, and she has come out of her hotel room. We're waiting for her to come into the ballroom to talk with the people who have been waiting for obviously a couple of hours to hear what she has to say. They said they was going to wait till the very last minute for her to come out to see what the final numbers were. They were remaining optimistic. Many of her supporters saying regardless of the outcome tonight, they were going to be proud of Dale Atkins. She's worked day and night. She said that she's put on some ads. Many of the ads that we saw concerning Cleo Fields and the Edwin Edwards corruption case. She says that regardless of the ads and regardless of the polls, she said she was going to be victorious tonight. She's coming into the ballroom right now, and we'll hear what she has to say. She's walking up. Many people, as you can hear, are cheering her on, proud of her, and we're hoping for a victory tonight. Let's see and hear from Dale Atkins.
Good evening. This is not a funeral. It's not a wake. We did well. We just came up a little short. But I want to thank all of you. I called Mr. Jordan and I congratulated him on his successful bid to be district attorney. I wished him well as our next district attorney, and I say to all of you, and I say to the public, he is now my district attorney. Yay! I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you to all.
Time we had the President of the United States and cabinet members going around the country in very visible roles on the ground over that 72 hours. We had a network of worker bees that were out there like Republicans never have really engaged in the past. And I think when you couple those two together, the vision of the President captured with the hard work and the intensity with what we put on the ground really did facilitate the ultimate victory we had tonight.
What about the agenda for the next 2 years, Senator Frist? What would be the top 2 items on your agenda?
Well, you know, up until tonight, things have been very partisan, Republican and Democrat, and I can guarantee you, you'll see our majority leader now, or soon-to-be majority leader, I predict, Trent Lott, really pulling people together to fulfill this agenda, this vision of the President of the United States. There's a stamp of approval by the all across America in at least all 34 of these races for this agenda, pulling together on the budget, pulling together on tax relief, permanent tax relief, pulling together on energy policy, getting all of these judges. 40% of President Bush's judges are behind a dam. Well, now it's time for that dam to come down and to have those judges to be released into our system. I'll see a lot of pulling together, Democrats and Republicans fulfilling or helping fulfill this agenda of President Bush.
Do you see any possibility that the tax cut that was passed last year will be altered in any fashion, any parts of it frozen?
You know, I think the most immediate thing we'll see is looking at Homeland Security, which really has been obstructed in the United States Senate, I believe, inexcusably. I think we'll see the release of these judges, which I think have been obstructed really inexcusably. And I think we'll pass a federal budget to give some sort of control to federal spending. And I think that's where at least the initial focus will be, coupled with what goes on internationally with Iraq and the United Nations.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Bill Frist, who is the chairman of the Senate re-election campaign, and he's had a very busy and now it turns out a very productive election day. Senator, thank you very much.
Good to be with you, Tom.
And his counterpart on the Democratic side is Senator Patty Murray of the state of Washington, and she joins us tonight from Washington, D.C. Senator, what happened to your candidates?
Well, we faced an unprecedented amount of money and an unprecedented campaign by a White House and the staff, just as my colleague Senator Frist just described to you, and we were in very Republican states that we were fighting. We had an uphill battle from the start, and I got to tell you, sitting here right now this time at night, we've done well for that kind of machine that was thrown at us. What we do know is we have lost 1 seat in Georgia, and we've picked up 1 seat in Arkansas. We are still counting votes in Missouri and Minnesota and Colorado, South Dakota, and you know, at the end of the day, this Senate is going to be in a majority by 1 vote, 1 way, either way, and we still have a lot of say about what the agenda of this country is going to be.
Senator Murray, earlier tonight, Tom Daschle told Jim Avila of NBC News that it's trending Republican, and that he had great concerns you were going to lose control of the Senate.
Well, clearly, the news is not real great for us at this point tonight, but we're Democrats. We don't give up.
When you said earlier that you had the daunting task of running in Republican states, in fact, there were 34 seats up, 20 of them were Republican.
That's correct, and in Republican-leaning states, all of them. So we knew we had an uphill battle to begin with, and I think that it played out tonight.
What happens next Monday for the Democrats?
Well, I think clearly for Democrats, we are going to continue to fight for the issues we care about. We ran this election saying the economy is the #1 issue out there. Jobs, getting education, training for our workers that are out of work, unemployment insurance. We're not giving up on these issues. These are things we care deeply about and believe this country needs us fighting for, and we will continue to do that.
All right, thank you very much, Senator Patty Murray of the state of Washington, still counting the votes tonight in Missouri, South Dakota, and Minnesota. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Tim, they do have a daunting task, but the fact is that if the Republicans do get control of the Senate, it will be just by 1 or 2 votes. But nonetheless, that's enough to get their judges through and most of their legislation through, as they learned when they lost 1 vote when Jim Jeffords went from being a Republican to an independent and siding with the Democrats.
There'll be an awful lot of pressure on Senator Lincoln Chafee, the Republican from Rhode Island, who Democrats are hopeful will one day want to become a Democrat. Look for them to make a concerted effort to try to pull him over, as they did Jim Jeffords.
He's been pretty explicit about saying he wouldn't do that.
He has said he
however.
wants to stay a Republican.
Right.
Absolutely.
His father was a famous old moderate Republican, and it's deep in his bones, I think.
Senator Murray said the votes are still outstanding, and they are, Tom, but let's just look at this. The Democrats wanted to capture these 4 seats. They captured 1, just Arkansas. That moves to the Democratic column. In the Democratic side, the Republicans have captured Georgia, South Dakota, Missouri, Minnesota, all outstanding. If the Republicans capture just 1 of those, they will take control of the U.S. Senate. If by chance the Democrats hang on to those 3 seats, then Louisiana on December 7th becomes a major battleground, and the Democrats must win that runoff in order to maintain control of the Senate. The odds are deeply stacked against the Democrats as we talk tonight.
Tim, we're going to show you the makeup of the United States Senate at this hour. Now, there are still 4 races to be decided, as you can see. Republicans have 49, Democrats 46, and independents 1. Now, Jesse Ventura has appointed an independent to the Senate, but there's some question about whether or not he'll be able to take office if Norm Coleman wins tonight. He may get certified right away as the winner and replace Paul Wellstone. They're still sorting through the election laws out there in the state of Minnesota. So there are a lot of things up for grabs, but the big picture is that it does appear very, very likely that the Republicans will have at least 1, perhaps as many as 2 votes in the United States Senate.
And remember, when the Senate was 50-50 and Dick Cheney cast the deciding vote, making Trent Lott the majority leader, there was a power-sharing agreement entered into by the Democrats and Republicans for dividing up the committees, but having one party, in this case the Republicans, as the chairman.
All right. All right. We'll be back with more. We're going to have a conversation with Rush Limbaugh, among others, when we continue on Election Night 2002 here on NBC. That's 30 Rockefeller Plaza in New York. This is the nation's capital. And tonight, it's a town that belongs to President George W. Bush after campaigning strenuously in 15 states, I think, altogether, and raising well over $100 million for Republican candidates. It paid off, as Dick Cheney might say, big time. Tonight, it appears very likely the Republicans will have control of the United States Senate and expand their base in the U.S. House to go with the power that they already have in the White House. One of the races that concerned them greatly was in the state of Colorado, where they had a Republican incumbent, Wayne Allard, running against Tom Strickland, a former U.S. attorney. This is a rematch. Strickland, by Republican and Democratic accounts alike, was closing fast, but not fast enough based on the vote that we're seeing so far. We have projected Wayne Allard will be returning to the nation's capital as a Republican senator. 3/4 of the precincts have been counted in the state of Colorado, which has a very popular Republican governor out there as well, elected tonight, Governor Bill Owens. And there is Senator Allard right now. Senator Allard, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Tom. It's good to be with you this evening.
No one in the country had a tougher race than you did. What were you think? What were the issues that separated you from Tom Strickland in the closing hours, in your judgment?
Well, I think there's a number of issues that separated us. Number one, it was this talking about the security of the country. I felt like we would have peace, should have peace through strength. I differed with him on the issues of a broad-based tax cut, differed with him on water on the western slope. You know, Colorado's impacted by a severe drought here, and differed on him on local control versus more mandates from Washington.
What's going to be your #1 priority when you get back to Washington, and if, as expected, the Republicans have a majority in the Senate?
Well, my #1 priority would be to continue to work with this Republican president to continue to build up our defenses so that we can be more secure. We don't have to worry as much about terrorism.
Senator, there was almost no talk at all in this campaign about the need for energy conservation or new sources beyond drilling in the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. Do you think that that will be an issue in the next 2 years?
I think that energy will again be an issue in 3 or 4 years. Experts tell me that we're headed for another energy shortage crisis, and we need to be addressing this issue. I'm disappointed that in this session we didn't get an energy plan passed for the United States. I will support a broad-based energy plan that would include renewable energy and conservation.
Thank you very much, Senator Wayne Allard. Again, congratulations on your re-election tonight. Very tough race out there in Colorado. Let's go to NBC's Brian Williams now in New York, who's been watching the governor's races for us and why people voted the way they did in some of those races. Brian?
And Tom, let's whip around the nation, beginning in Arkansas. A tight one. The GOP wanted it. They got it. Mike Huckabee will be holding that seat. Granholm in Michigan, as you mentioned, possible national figure someday for the Democrats. A big name there, John Engler, is gone, term limited. Slave reparations came up in this campaign. It was a weird one. Kempthorne in Idaho, the projected winner there. Sebelius, rather. Democrats take an open seat in Kansas for governor. Vilsack, popular Democrat in Iowa. GOP wanted that one. Texas, GOP wanted and got Rick Perry in the State House there. Mike Rounds, we already announced, in South Dakota. Rhode Island, where politics is, shall we say, always interesting. Don Carcieri, the Republican winner there. Governor, South Carolina, Mark Sanford, something of an upset over Jim Hodges. And in New York tonight, where a Cuomo could not win and a Clinton could not help this year, even if he was a former president, Pataki was unbeatable after what he did for the state post 9/11. You have to wonder here in New York about the other Clinton. As you know, a lot of Supreme Court justices like being in the minority because they can make more noise, and Senator Clinton now becomes a very vocal member of that perhaps minority Democratic Party in the Senate. Tom?
All right. Thank you very much, NBC's Brian Williams. We'll tell you that we have an unusual situation developing in Oklahoma. They now say that they've counted 100% of the precincts so far, but they've got a dead heat. Steve Largent, obviously an old NFL star and a Republican member of Congress, was hoping to capture the Republican State House. Frank Keating had been the governor out there, but Steve Largent in a very, very tight race. Hard to imagine one that's tighter than that at this hour. We haven't gotten a return from San Francisco yet, Tim. District 8 in the San Francisco Valley running for a county supervisor. The candidate's name is simply Starchild, listed as an exotic dancer and escort. We probably won't have that before we're off the air. But if we do, we'll get back to you. This is Election Night on NBC. Very happy president of the United States tonight with the two men who will be leading it. Now appears very likely the two chambers of the Congress. That's Dennis Hastert on the left, who has been the Speaker, Trent Lott, who lost his job as the Senate Majority Leader and very likely will get it back. The president's staying up later than usual. He was going to just stay up and congratulate his brother Jeb Bush, who had been reelected as governor of Florida, but things were turning out so well for him that he hung around for a while in the living quarters of the White House and had a number of friends in. Let's show you the race in California for governor. This is more than a bit of a surprise at this hour. 28% of the precincts have been counted so far. Bill Simon has a 1-point lead over Gray Davis. That would be a stunning upset. You'd have to say it would be the upset of the year in American politics. Bill Simon had been trailing Gray Davis, who was not personally popular even in his own party. But he had a war chest of $60 million, and he used it like a warrior against Bill Simon, who was running for office the first time and stumbled on any number of occasions. So we'll wait and see how that one turns out. We don't know where all those votes are coming in from. California, a lot of Democratic votes in the northern part of the state. You generally tend to get the votes at the beginning from the southern, more conservative part of the state. Joining us now is Rush Limbaugh. We're pleased to have you with us tonight.
Thank
Rush,
you.
We were saying earlier tonight it looked like a Republican breeze. It's now become a warm gale pushing the Republicans into office and the Democrats out.
It is, but don't forget now, there are a lot of situations where in Minnesota there's a possible lawsuit waiting with the absentee ballots, disenfranchisement, and how close it is. Missouri, it's 22,000 votes last time I looked. Any number of things. Democrats don't give up. You know, they don't give up easily.
Last time I checked, Republicans didn't either.
Yeah, well, you know, I heard something earlier tonight. I've been watching you guys backstage, and I saw Carville too hiding behind a trash can when I said, and he was upset because the Democrats ran a Me Too campaign. I would like to respectfully disagree with that. I think this Me Too campaign was a piggyback effort at the last minute, but all year. Last 2 years, actually, since George Bush was elected, they said he was an illegitimate president. They said Florida is payback time. There's a lot of anger down there, and Terry McAuliffe staked his personal reputation on it. I think they've been opposing George W. Bush ever since he was inaugurated. They've tried it on every issue. They even tried separation on the war on terrorism for a while, and it backfired on them. Their Me Too-ism is a result of not standing for anything, or at least not being honest about what they stand for, not willing to tell people what they want, and they ran a negative campaign trying to get people upset to vote against Republicans. And when they say, well, we didn't stand for anything, I think they did. I think the face of the Democratic Party has been Tom Daschle and McAuliffe, and it's been entirely negative against a very popular president. And I think the tactics in the last 2 weeks, well, as I said earlier, in New Jersey and what happened in Minneapolis, I think is just both of them are little microcosms of the entire 2 years of the Bush administration up till now, the way the Democrats have played it. And they're going to have to get their act together. Republicans just have to keep doing what they were doing. They're going to formalize tax cuts, maybe accelerate them, make them permanent, try to fix the public education system. They ran on issues, and it works every time it's tried.
Are you not at all concerned about the size of the deficit and what's likely to happen in the next 3 years, especially if we have a war against Iraq, which is going to be a very expensive proposition?
Well, I remember during the 80s, the deficit was a big monster that was going to destroy us, and it didn't. We ended up, if we would accelerate a tax cut, the deficit would end. We'll end that with economic growth, and I think it's what the president is trying to do, combine, you know, you look at the sniper situation that plagued this area. People were afraid to go out. Grocery stores were empty. Commerce came to a screeching halt. The issue of security and the economy are linked. War on terrorism is a security issue. You get that fixed and the economy is going to come back with it. That'll cause tax revenues to come back up and the deficit will go back down. Economic growth works every time it's tried, but it doesn't work if you raise taxes. And that was the Democrats' answer. It didn't work. It's not going to work in the future. I think that the economic circumstance will take care of itself. The growth rate's starting to come back up. And if the president will now proceed with vigor on his domestic agenda, not just the judges, but accelerating this tax cut, the deficit will dwindle.
Is there not a risk that if the Republicans control the White House, the House and the Senate, and the Democrats effectively try to be a party in opposition, the American public will say the Republicans had control and couldn't get results?
Yeah, there's no question there's that risk. And now there are factions in the Republican Party too. You've got moderates in the Republican Party, House especially. So the idea that there's a monolithic Republican Party, it's going to ram all this stuff through, is a myth, too. It's going to take a lot of work on the part of the president to keep his own party unified when they're in power. But I think the ace in the hole, the Democrats are going to have no choice but them to be opposed now. They've got to stake out that ground for the 2004 race. And it's, I think it's a great opportunity. If these results hold up, as they're projected to tonight, it's a great opportunity. And if they can show in 2 years that they deserve leadership, then they'll have it reaffirmed in 2004. If they don't show that they deserve it, the Democrats will triumph again. So it's an opportunity, but they've got to keep doing what they do, which is stand for what they stand for and not be afraid to say so.
I remember in 1994, you and Bill Bennett, on a C-SPAN walk, I watched you on a Saturday night when you were over in Maryland, and you were talking to the freshmen Republicans who were coming in, giving them advice on how they should behave. What would you be telling them this time?
Don't gloat. I'll tell you what went wrong in 1994. The Republicans thought the country had turned conservative. They thought that's what the election meant, and so they were a little arrogant about their victory, and they assumed that they represented a majority of the Americans. And there were a lot of things that went into that race that really had not everything to do with ideology. And they stopped defining themselves. They stopped explaining who conservatives are and what conservatism is. I think they don't gloat. Do not act like this is a permanent victory of any kind. Take it for what it is. Try to analyze it correctly. and just keep standing for what they stand for. And this new tone thing, you know, I was an original critic of it, but I think it's worked.
Rush Limbaugh, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you guys. Thank you so much.
Great. We'll be back with more on Election Night 2002 right after this. We're back on Election Night 2002, a night in which it appears very likely that the Republicans will gain control of the United States Senate. But there are outstanding races, and they're very tight indeed in some cases. We want to take you through the raw vote total now. In the state of Missouri, 95% of the precincts have been counted so far. Jean Carnahan is the Democratic incumbent, and look at that. About 25,000 votes separating her from Jim Talent, the Republican congressman who is challenging her for that seat. In Minnesota, they're taking longer because they have to count the ballots by hand. Fritz Mondale was a late addition to that ticket, obviously. And with 31% of the precincts counted so far, you can see that the difference between them is about 25,000 votes there as well, 52 to 45 in the percentages. Yeah. John Thune and Tim Johnson in South Dakota. Johnson has now slipped to second place as they move into the western part of the state, which is heavily Republican. As the returns come in there, it looks better and better for John Thune, who was effectively a statewide office holder. He was the only congressman in the state. That would be a big blow to Tom Daschle, who'd been out there campaigning hard for him. Louisiana, 98% of the precincts counted so far. Mary Landrieu, the Democratic incumbent, has to have more than 50% of the vote to avoid a runoff. It seems very unlikely that she'll get that high, probably statistically impossible. That means December 7th. Between now and then, a lot of money, a lot of consultants, but probably not control of the Senate, because it seems likely, Tim, that the Republicans can get there without Mary Landrieu.
All they have to do is win South Dakota or Missouri or Minnesota, right. One of the three. Right. You know, Tom, I've been thinking about how Norm Coleman and John Thune were recruited by this White House to run for these races, planned events. Walter Mondale, behind tonight in this popular vote, largely because of the memorial service that turned into a political rally, an unplanned political event. You can never know what's going to happen in politics. As we've been talking all night about the governors, Brian Williams reports, the conventional wisdom being the Democrats now have governors in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Illinois. That'll be great for 2004. Well, all those states had Republican governors in 2000, and Al Gore won those states. That's right. Jeb Bush gets reelected, and what does he say to you? If Amendment 9 passes for reducing class size, he has to cut programs or raise taxes. How popular will that be in 2004 when his brother wants to run for re-election? You just never know.
Well, one of the reasons that American politics is so fluid these days is that there's just so little party loyalty. We see it in Washington because the people who get here run on a party ticket. But as you move across the country, you find people like Paul Volcker, who said, I used to be a Democrat, but I don't know what I am now. And I think that there's more and more of that across the country.
And when Rush Limbaugh says Republicans are not monolithic, right, and they shouldn't gloat, that's pretty interesting advice coming from a man who was very much part of the Newt Gingrich Republican Revolution.
All right, well, this has been a fascinating night so far, and it's going to continue. We want to say to those of you who are joining us now, well, we want to welcome those of you who are joining us now, many of you from the mountain states. This is a very exciting election night. Depending, obviously, on which side of the partisan ledger you fall, it's either disappointing or triumphant. It appears that it's going to be a very big night for President George W. Bush, who spent the last 2 weeks campaigning hard around the country. He was criticized by the Democrats. But now, tonight, the Democrats are on the losing side in the House, it appears, and also on the Senate. This is a triumphant pickup for the president, who came into office with a 50-50 Senate, then lost one of the senators and lost control of that. Tonight, it appears very likely that he will regain it. David Gregory is at the White House now, where obviously the lights have been burning late and happily. David?
Yeah, indeed, Tom. The president just went to bed, we're told, just a few minutes ago. He was supposed to go to bed at 9:30 Eastern time, but he was burning up the phone lines. He was pretty pumped up and had a lot of congratulatory phone calls to offer around the country. Tom, Tim mentioned the political operation out of this White House, recruiting candidates in South Dakota and Minnesota. I've spoken tonight to senior White House officials who say, look, after the election in 2000, we made a concerted effort to build up the Republican organization across the country. One of the big trends they see tonight, grassroots organizations enacting, implementing what they call the 72-hour plan, which is making sure that these local campaigns get in touch with voters starting at 72 hours before Election Day, beefing up door-to-door efforts, phone banks, all of those things that drive out turnout. You add to that the fact that the president had such an aggressive schedule to turn out the vote. He traveled to key battlegrounds, and it made an important difference. There's another big story, of course, tonight, Tom, that doesn't have to do with the election, and that is that Harvey Pitt, the Security and Exchange Commission chairman, has resigned. This is the first high-profile resignation in this administration. He was the embattled head of the SEC, and he's gone tonight.
David Gregory, any talk about who may succeed Harvey Pitt? That's obviously going to be a key position to fill.
It absolutely will. No talk about that yet, Tom, but it may be just the beginning of part of an economic change in the team in the White House as well.
All right, thanks. David Gregory at the White House, back with more on Election Night 2002 after this. We're back in Election Night 2002. This was the year, once again, of women running for not just the state houses, but also for the United States Senate. That got overlooked a little bit. 11 ran for the Senate. And look at this, 10 candidates in 9 states for the state house. And tonight in Michigan, we know that one of them has already been elected. And Janet Napolitano was one of the prominent women who was running in the state of Arizona, although we've not been able to project in your race yet, Ms. Napolitano. We know that you're running a very strong race out there. Why do you think women are so... Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we're up, and the uncounted votes are largely Democratic votes, so we're feeling very good right now.
And why do you think women have done so well in the races for the State House?
I think the women who are running for the governorships were known quantities. Jennifer Granholm's an attorney general. I'm an attorney general. Catherine Sebelius is an insurance commissioner, and onward. We're not flashes in the pan. We've been working towards these jobs for a great many years.
Are we beyond gender politics at this point, so people don't say, well, she's a woman governor or he's a guy governor?
I certainly hope so. Maybe this will be the last time we have an interview like this, but in Arizona, should I win, and it looks like I will, I think we'll be the first state to have a woman governor succeed a woman governor. So clearly in Arizona, we're through the gender issue.
And is it easier to run as a woman in the West, do you think, than it is in the East?
You know, one would think so. If you look at the percentages in the legislatures and so forth, the western states tend to be better for women candidates, and I have no idea why, but that's just the way it is.
Well, I think it may have something to do with the ranching and farming tradition. Everybody has to work side by side, both out in the country and in the small towns.
Maybe that's it, but I'll tell you, when I was elected Attorney General 4 years ago, every statewide office holder elected that year was a woman from governor on down. So Arizona's really been leading the path.
All right, thanks very much, Janet Napolitano, tonight. Although we've not projected you as a winner yet, obviously you're running a very strong race there in Arizona.
Thank you.
We want to show Jeb Bush is the winner in the state of Florida tonight. We're going through some of the governors now. There he is, and he's...
I'm so lucky to have a great First Lady in my life, Columba. She's a great First Lady for the state of Florida. And to have my family here this special night means a whole lot to me. George and Jeb, thank you.
Jeb Bush, earlier tonight, he had his mother and father down there. He paid tribute to his brother, George W. Bush. For a long time, it was thought that this was the most effective politician in the Bush family. But his brother had to come down there and carry him around on his shoulders a little bit, Tim Russert. And in fact, it was quite genuine tonight when we had Jeb Bush on earlier, thanking his brother and how proud he was of him. He even said that he could borrow his baseball glove anytime that he wanted to.
The president made a dozen trips to Florida, Tom, to help his brother out. Terry McAuliffe, the chairman of the Democratic Party, made this the #1 race. Mr. McAuliffe's father-in-law was the treasurer for Bill McBride, the Democratic candidate. Right. As recently as Sunday, Terry McAuliffe said, "We are going to beat Jeb Bush." One other interesting point, the new governor of Michigan, Jennifer Granholm, the Attorney General, widely touted as a potential national figure. One problem, she was born in Canada. She could never run for president or vice president.
That's true. Let's go to Kerry Sanders now down in Florida and see how they did with their voting procedures this time. Kerry, did it go okay?
Well, it worked, and in 2000, you know, this was the beginning of a very long wait to see who had won the race for president. Here, 2 years later, and more than $50 million, and boy, what a difference. The system worked. Much of that money spent on the new technology, the touchscreen computers, and other high-tech voting equipment that's used to make this work and all come together. Also, I think it's important to note is that they also instituted some new rules in Florida that allow for early voting, and in some urban counties, upwards of 20% of the people who went to the polls went up to 15 days early and voted, and that made for a much smoother election. And finally, the police were involved in some counties. This was called in after 8 weeks ago during the primaries where there was yet one more meltdown. They went into a crisis mode. The police were called in to help, and tonight we saw police coming in with the ballots, all of them coming in, all of the polling locations opened on time and closed on time. And that's really a significant development for Florida, as you well know, Tom.
Thank you very much, Kerry Sanders. Indeed, I think that they're relieved on a couple of accounts in the Republican Party there that they did get the votes counted and they got their governor back into office. Let's go to California now, and someone who's a rising star on the California political scene. He's already been a star for a long time on the big screen, and that's Arnold Schwarzenegger, who has Proposition 49 on the ballot out there. He wants to get more help for youngsters in after-school programs. I'm not going to pretend we don't know each other, Arnold, so I'll just call you by your first name. How's your proposition doing so far?
Everything is going really terrific, Tom and Tim. It looks like we are more than 10 points ahead right now with half of the votes in. So everything looks really great, and I'm very happy that all the hard work paid off. And I think that California will, in fact, be the first state that will have comprehensive after-school programs. And so I'm looking forward to that.
A lot of people see this as just a stepping stone for Arnold Schwarzenegger so that he can run for governor of California. Is that your plan?
Well, I know a lot of people have been asking me about that, but the reality of it is for me, the important thing is now to win this and then to go and implement the programs. And this will take a lot of time and a lot of hard effort and work, and this is what I'm going to do next. So I'm not going to concentrate on running for office or anything like that. I'm concentrating mainly on just implementing this program, and I'm thinking about the children right now and not about myself, what I'm going to do.
It's no secret, of course, that you're married to our own Maria Shriver, who's a member of the Kennedy family, all of them registered Democrats. You've made no secret of your Republican inclinations. Do they try to draw you across the line into their party?
No, not at all. They know that I cannot be persuaded. The fact of the matter is that, you know, there are so many things that Democrats and Republicans have in common. I concentrate much more on the things that we can do together rather than dividing everything always. This Proposition 49 was a perfect example of that, how we brought the Democrats and the Republicans together, and we formed one of the most powerful coalitions because we reached out and made it a bipartisan issue rather than dividing people. So we are successful because of that, and I think that's the way we should move forward, to always think about what can we do together, what do we have in common, rather than always, you know, nitpicking and fighting over things.
Arnold, thank you very much, and congratulations if these numbers hold up and you do win, because I know you invested a lot of your own personal time, to say nothing of a few of your dollars as well in this effort, and it is going to be a welcome, I know, in California.
Well, thank you very much to both of you. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a look at those California governor numbers again, because we were a little stunned by them earlier. 45% of the vote has been counted so far, and now Gray Davis has moved into a lead. What likely happened is that they got the early returns from Southern California, the Orange County area, which is more conservative. That's often the pattern there. Then as they move north into San Francisco and the more liberal areas, then Gray Davis will do better. But if he finishes just 2 or 3 points ahead of Bill Simon, that will be stunning news, because Bill Simon was called, even by Republicans back here in Washington, the worst campaigner that they had in the nation. Gray Davis was running as an incumbent with $60 million in the bank. He was not a very popular figure in his own party, and for Bill Simon to run this kind of a race against him, not good news for Gray Davis.
Tom, the two major candidates for governor for California had negative ratings over 50%, but someone had to win.
Right.
And watching Arnold Schwarzenegger talk about his political future, I began to think, could an actor ever be elected governor of California?
Yeah, I was there for the first one in 1966. They were asking the same question.
But he can't run for president either. He was born in Austria.
Born in Austria, right. We're going to be back in just a moment with Charlie Cook, who's one of the great political gurus in this country, talking about these races that are still too close to call. Can't award the Senate to the Republicans yet. It's looking very favorable for them, and we'll hear from Charlie in a moment. We're back now. We still have 3 outstanding Senate races that will determine who has control of the United States Senate in the next term. In Missouri, almost all the votes have been counted so far. As you can see, we've got under 30,000 votes, it looks to me, in my quick math there, separating Jean Carnahan, who's the Democratic incumbent, from Jim Talent. She has not yet conceded, and with good reason, looking at the raw numbers. Let's also take a look at what's going on in Minnesota. A slower count there because of the hand count of the ballots. Fritz Mondale was added to those ballots after he replaced Paul Wellstone. So there are 5 points separating the two of them in raw vote, 26,000 votes altogether. In South Dakota, John Thune now has eased into the lead with 81% of the votes counted thus far. He has a lead of about 1,000 votes. Tim Johnson beat Larry Pressler by just 8,600 votes. But what's happening now in South Dakota is that you're moving into the western part of the state. These are sparsely populated counties, but they are heavily Republican, where John Thune, he's a native of that area, Murdo, South Dakota, and he is likely to be much more popular than Tim Johnson. Charlie Cook is our political guru and wizard here. He's a publisher of a widely read newsletter. We've been saying all night long here, Charlie, that it's looking good for the Republicans, but we can't hand it off to them at this point because those races could go the other way.
You're right. I mean, we've got Senate Democrats are walking on the edge of a cliff, but they haven't fallen over yet. The Talent race in Missouri, or Talent over Carnahan, you know, he looks like he's going to win, but it's not there yet. But, you know, I wouldn't quite give it to him then. In the House, it's still, I mean, I don't think Democrats can win control of the House, but they still could pick up a couple seats here. And you've had 3 Republican incumbents in the House already lose. Only 1 Democratic incumbent's lost. You know, in the governorships, you know, you are going to see Democrats pick up some. So, you know, this is going to be a good night by historical perspective for Republicans. But, you know, I don't think, you know, this isn't a landslide or anything.
What does it tell you about the country, Charlie?
Split down the middle. I mean, you're going to see these governors roughly 25-25, the Senate, you know, 51-49, something like that. In the House, you know, probably 51%, 49%. So not much of change. $1 billion will be spent and not much will change.
But what will change if the Republicans take control of the Senate, for example, we've talked about this at length tonight, is that the president will get his judges before the Senate Judiciary Committee and probably confirmed. And that's a big change.
And they'll get to set, yes, that's absolutely right, and they'll get to set the agenda, you know, control the hearings, that sort of thing. But in terms of having the oomph to push legislation through the Senate, gosh, you got to have a lot closer to 60 votes than 50 or 51.
And, Charlie, what happens in terms of how this is likely to affect how the president positions himself for 2004? What are the danger signs for him?
Well, the problem is that these midterm elections are of just absolutely no use whatsoever in terms of predicting how presidents do 2 years later. I mean, you look at President Clinton with that disaster in 1994. I mean, it's really not a good barometer at all.
All right, thank you very much, Charlie Cook.
care.
A cautionary note, we still have those outstanding races in Minnesota, Missouri, and South Dakota, and they are very close, but if the Republicans can pick up just one of them, they'll be in good shape here before the end of the night. That does not mean that there has been a big mandate that has been laid on the president, although he certainly did have a personal stake in this campaign. Let's go to NBC's Brian Williams now, who's keeping track of the governor's races around the country and also why some of the people voted the way they did. Brian?
And Tom, the voters continue to have a funny way of putting their stamp on their states. In Massachusetts, the home of Ted Kennedy, they have also shown tonight in our apparent winner, Mitt Romney, that they want a Mormon Republican governor. He came to prominence, of course, running the Salt Lake Olympics. And Mitt Romney, it looks like tonight, is headed to victory there. However, we won't have an answer tonight in Vermont. Way too close. And out in Oklahoma, as you mentioned, the election that features the former NFL wide receiver, tight as a drum tonight in the Steve Largent election in Oklahoma. We won't have an answer there. Where's the issue? Where is the anger tonight? According to our 3-day NBC News poll, 46% of the people say things are going in the right direction. 45% say things are seriously off on the wrong track. It is a split nation. Voters' ratings of the state of the economy are as low as they were back in '94, the year of the angry Republican Revolution. They hit Bill Clinton in the off-year election so hard back then he was forced to call himself relevant the next morning and call the presidency relevant. You mentioned they hit Roosevelt in 42 to the tune of 45 seats in the House. So we aren't seeing that kind of anger directed against this president, at least not on the economy tonight. Quite the contrary. Tom?
All right, thanks very much, NBC's Brian Williams. Tim Russett has just told me that whoever is the new majority leader will be on Meet the Press on Sunday. You have exclusive interviews lined up with Trent Lott and with Tom Daschle.
Who will go first? That's the question. We'll know tomorrow morning, I would hope.
One of the things I think is going to be interesting in the next 2 years, Tim, is the tone of business in this town. Wherever I went across the country, Republicans and Democrats alike, however ardent they were about their parties, and I'm so fed up with bickering, I'm so fed up with these negative ads. Now, we know that they move people, but I think the message that is being sent here in that we have a kind of 50-50 nation is get together, figure out how we're going to get through this more complex time that we're all dealing with.
Will either party be willing to surrender the issue to achieve a result? Compromise on prescription drugs or save the issue? Compromise, they both understand that Social Security and Medicare needs a long-term fix. But they want the issue so desperately for the 2004 campaign. Will they be able to compromise? It's an open question, and I don't know the answer. I don't think they do.
Well, stay tuned. We'll have continuing coverage, of course, on NBC. Every election night has surprises. This one had many. Still more to come, perhaps. For all of us at NBC News, good night, and thanks for joining us.